Okay, are you tired of losing at chess? Well, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to do dun, 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 a daily puzzle. I'll explain to you how we do this and how this will help you get better. Now you can sit around and get the solution by trial and error, clicking on the moves here and there. Yeah, that's what the amateurs do, and it doesn't give you the same speed of improvement. Here's the way I do it. I do it and practice it like you're going to play in a tournament. We're going to think about the move, figure out what the guy's response is going to be, play the response to the response, and when we get to this process, as I'm going to show you, we make the move after we've figured out what we're doing. That's the difference. We're not here just to screw around and play random moves. You know, hey, how about queen to b6 check? Well, that loses, obviously. So we're going to do this and get this like you saw in my other video when I just first showed you the chess.com thing with my new account. So what we're going to do, I break it down into 4 things. We look at checks, which is queen b6 check, obviously. We also have bishop to d4 check. Okay, that's the only checks we have. We also look at captures. So that's the only capture we can make is knight takes g3. Then we look at piece contacts. Stuff like, I don't know, I could move my knight to attack his rook, like knight to d6. So I move my piece to contact or threaten to capture another piece. All right. We can play like also queen to e6, queen to c6, queen to a6 are piece contact moves. Well, we could have captured queen takes g3 as well as knight takes g3, but also I guess technically queen to g4 will be a contact, but whatever. Look as many as possible as you can, even the stupidest move like queen to g4, which is stupid. But if you don't look at those moves by training, when you're playing a game, you're going to overlook something. You're going, oh, dude, that move looks so stupid, but it wins. So then the last thing we look at is the board situation. Like, are we threatening to checkmate this guy? What's the material balance? Like, in this material balance, it basically boils down to knight and bishop is imbalanced by rook and pawn. So it's roughly even. We have the mobility and attacking advantage with the multiple pieces. We have 3 attacking pieces. Potentially, he only has 2. But he's got more pawns, so if he can get to an endgame, he could theoretically be able to cash it. Not easy, but it's possible. Luckily, the pawns, his extra pawn is on the king side where it's going to be harder. It would be harder to cash that in. Now, if you had like 2 pawns on the queen side where you could force 2 versus 1 and make a pass pawn, different story. Now, so that covers, we look at checks, captures, piece contact, board situation. In any order, do whatever floats your boat. I do them in the order I mention it because, well, that's just the way I invented the system. It's good for me. So, now, then also, I guess you could look at it and certain moves should jump off the board at you. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. Sometimes they're good moves, sometimes they're bad moves visually. The move that most, readily jumps off the board could be knight takes g3 because that's a pretty good move. Knight d6 is not bad, but to me the move that really jumps off the board was bishop d4 check. So what happens if we check this guy with the bishop? Now I have a technique called the brute force where I just look at the most obvious move and just go through it and see where it leads us. And if it doesn't work, maybe it can lead us to a finesse move to correct why it's not working. So let's try to harass this king. with checks. So bishop d4 check. Now, he's got 3 squares where his king could move. The knight guards f2, so does the bishop if we check him on d4. So he can't go to f2. He could go to f1 or h1. Now let's look at h1. So we're going to deductively remove the bad moves. Because my philosophy is I want to figure out his best move, and if I can beat his best move, if he plays an inferior move, he's dog meat. So king to h1. Well, my goal at this test is to harass him with checks. The only check I can hit him with, well, knight takes g3 check, or queen to h5 is checkmate. Oh, and I'm sorry, I said he only had 3 moves. I was wrong, it was 4. He had f2, f1, h1, and h2. h2 is exactly the same thing. It doesn't matter. h1 and h2 are both the same. Queen to h5 is checkmate. So he cannot go to those squares. So bishop d4 check. He's forced to play king to f1. I have a rule that my other videos I mentioned it. If you're harassing the king and he only has 1 legal square that doesn't lose, you're probably winning. So bishop d4 check automatically is in the probably winning category just from my technique of my system. King to f1. Well, the only thing we can really check him, we could play knight again. We could play knight takes g3 check. He would be forced to go to, the knight would guard f1 and e2, so he'd go king to e1. Now the problem with that move is our queen has been pinned by his queen because our knight's moved out of the way. So that move is not going to get it done. So let's look at a different move. We've played bishop d4 check, king to f1, queen to a6 check is the only other check move we have. Well, look at this. His king has been checked by the bishop here. So all these dark squares are off line for him. They're illegal moves. He's king to f1. We check him with the queen here. Queen a6 check. e2 is now out of bounds. So his only move, king e1. So his only move is king to e1. Now we can harass him with another check. We could check him. Queen takes a5 is possible. However, if you do this, we're going to lose control of the white squares. So I'd rather not move my queen because we've diagonally taken these squares away from him, from d4 to g1, from f1 to a6 with the queen there. So now he's on king to e1. So our bishop is on d4. We did bishop d4 check. I like to rerun from the beginning multiple times doing this exercise because it keeps you fresh where your pieces are. Bishop to d4 check, king f1, queen to a6 check, king to e1, and now look at this move. We can check him on a black square. We could play bishop to c3 check, but he could just play rook takes bishop, knight takes rook, queen takes knight, and now he's just still a pawn ahead, and he's not going to lose basically. So that's not going to cut it. But we have one other check, don't we? Our bishop being on d4, we could play bishop to f2 check, guarded by the knight. Hey, if he wants to play queen takes bishop, knight takes queen, I'm all for it, because he's toast. So it's not, he can't really do that. So it's bishop d4 check, king f1, queen a6 check, king e1, bishop f2 check. Well, this knight is just kicking butt here, so he's got one move again. He's got one legal move, king to d1. And there's a checkmate. So if you don't see the checkmate, pause the video and unpause it when you figure it out, okay? Because now I'm going to show you we're correct. I've already done for you the confirmation. I'm going to run through it one more time before I actually show you the moves. Bishop to d4 check, king f1, h-files checkmate. Queen to a6 check, get the white squares under control. King to e1 is forced. Bishop to f2 check. The knight guards d2. We own the black squares, these white squares, and the knight owns d2, which is fantastic. So, king to d1. And then we play checkmate. Now you have to be able to do that. Well, you don't have to. The goal is for you to be able to do this mentally without touching the pieces as I'm doing right now. I'm going to show you. I do this in my mind. Now, one of the things you'll notice, our moves are the odd moves, his move are the even moves. Let's count this and see how many moves deep I see in this problem. This is 1. That's 2. This is 3. Oh, rook to c4, fantastic. I didn't foresee this possibility. It doesn't matter. This is worse for him. Well, not worse. We were going to checkmate him if he doesn't interpose the rook. He can't interpose the queen because knight to d2 check. So, this happens in real chess games all the time. But when you're playing these kind of things, generally speaking, when you're playing the best move, even the times that you don't see stuff, it's the best move for reasons even we don't see. So, what do you guys think you should do here? If you don't see it, pause the video and see if you can figure it out. And then if you can't, give yourself a minute or two. If you get it, great. If you don't get it, don't worry about it. You're going to see it, and then you'll never forget it ever again. If you pause the video, we're right back now. Here's the crusher. And he's going to fork his next move. He messed up my sequence, but it's okay, no problem. His next move would be king to d3. We just take this pawn, and he's going to take our bishop, and then we're going to be one knight clear ahead with an outside passed rook pawn. He's toast. Now, let's go back here again. I messed up my sequence. But it's okay. A win is a win, right? Well, he was going to get checkmated. I'm going to show you the checkmate. That's 1, 2, 3. Now, 4 was if he goes to king e1 would be 4. Bishop f2 check would be 5. King d1 would be 6. Queen to f1 is checkmate on move 7. So this was either a 7-move checkmate, but he did play a better move that I missed, which was rook to c4. Now he can't play queen to c4 interposition because knight checks and you just win the queen and he's completely dust. So rook to c4 was the correct move, which I had overlooked, but it loses to a counter tactic of queen takes rook check. And like I said, if you didn't see this, you'll never unsee it again. You'll go, oh man, I will take that rook so fast and then knight fork this guy. So this is a very instructive problem that shows you how to do this with a structured system to solve the problem. I do this all the time on my regular videos, so go check those out. This will help you guys get better faster. So hopefully you enjoyed this one because it was a good one. And I'll see you guys later.